right.
What advice would
Uh-oh.
you give somebody wanting to follow in your footsteps? Like you're going to get a little baby Jen apprentice, and
Oh,
yep,
okay.
yep. What advice are you going to give that person
Well,
who's had trauma in their life and wants to help other people?
oh my goodness. Well, I do get that because I have a lot of students a lot of the time who are, embarking on the profession. And what I'm really committed to is that when we talk about them. We don't,
Yeah.
we like, I think good supervision is a lot about the human part of the therapist, not about the client and what to do with the client. I think I really stress to people starting out, do your own work, do your own healing, walk your own path, see what it feels like from the inside out. Like really experience the journey of healing and you'll learn more doing that. So, with the first session that I have with them, I'm like, okay, let's do a genogram. Who's your mom? Who's your dad? What's your family story? What's your history? How do you feel talking about it? Like we're right into it. And they come with their pencil and their paper and they think I'm going to tell them what to do with their clients.
Yes, they do.
And I'm
And
like,
they're
oh, honey, you're my client now.
like,
Like this is
and
going
they're
to
like,
be.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to
And
say to her.
I romanticize the old days in psychotherapy when psychoanalysis required the therapist to be doing twice or three times a week of their own therapy. Like we've kind of moved away from that being a requirement. And it's
Really?
become this kind of more academic learning of what are the methods and the other thing is I tell people stop reading all the fucking books and like go to a couple trainings, then just find your own way. Like it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be, it's about relational stuff. It's not necessarily in a fancy intervention.
Yes. Yeah. Or it doesn't have to be a
Doesn't have
fancy
to be. You don't
interview.
have to,
Yeah.
yeah, like I
Yeah.
just don't want therapists to lose who they are in their work.
Hmm.
Because that's what enlivens us is to know ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Well, and that's how you're going to relate to the person that you're treating or helping or supporting.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That you've kind of pulled your pants down in public too, because
Yeah.
that's what it feels like, right?
Um, are you ready for me to interview you, Jen? This is my first
Yes.
interview I've ever done.
It, you know what? It made
Hmm.
me nervous when I started doing it. I thought it'd be easy and then I would get nervous. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
glad
don't think
it's
that it's
you.
easy.
I'm
I
glad
don't
it's
think it's
you.
easy.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
not nervous at all. I just have to talk. That's easy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's totally easy. I felt like as I was preparing for this, thinking, "Oh, this is like I have quite an opportunity." And then what lens do I want to look through in order to
Oh,
I
yeah.
know, but really I think that it should be from the narrative of the position that I sit in
Uh-huh.
and the questions that I have for you
Okay.
to help me navigate some of these things. But to get to know you first, really.
Doke. I don't
Okay,
know what that
ready?
means. I have no idea what any of that means, but we'll see.
How long have you been in therapy, Jen? Or not in therapy, counseling? And tell me the appropriate terminology to use when referring to what it is that you do.
Okay. Well, people use counselor or therapist interchangeably, I would say. We're about
Okay.
to be renamed in this province psychotherapists. We're getting
Oh,
regoverned and renamed. So, but right now I would say counselor or therapist.
yeah.
26 years. Ah! 1990,
Incredible.
well, actually 1998, I got my first real counseling job. So whatever that is, 25 and 2,
That's
27
enough.
years.
Seriously.
I graduated from the master's program I did in 1999. Wow.
Wow.
It's a long
That's
time.
incredible. That is really incredible. So you've witnessed a lot of change. You've witnessed a lot of change in, I guess, what we'll call psychotherapy now instead of counseling or therapy. We might as well
Yeah.
just get ahead of the curve, because
Okay,
I just like to
sure.
be that way. So
Psycho
you,
the rapist. That's what it that if you break down that word, it's psycho the rapist. Did you
it
ever see that
seriously is.
Saturday Night Live bit with Sean Connery? And they were playing Jeopardy, and one category was called psychotherapy, and he's like, "I'll take Psycho the Rapist for $200." Not my idea,
Now
but
I'm gonna have to Google it,
yeah.
because
Okay,
that's
yes,
actually kind of funny.
I will stay
Yeah.
on track.
Oh, yeah, me too. Like, because we're so good at that. It's so good at that. Okay, so from the beginning of when you graduated and you went into practice,
Yeah.
tell me like big significant, well, even if you can just come up with one example of a significant change that you've seen since the start to now.
Oh, I think there's been a big move out of the head into the body in how people heal. So
And
the
are you kind
whole,
of
like,
referring to the feel it, live in it, it's
no,
okay?
like accessing the somatic body as the vehicle to healing versus everything being about thinking different or CBT was always big and in some ways it still is, but and it's all about thoughts are connected to feelings are connected to behaviors, and if you change a thought, everything else changes by itself, which some people can do. I never could. But somatic work came along and said, get out of that whole thing and get into what is happening in your body when you say this. What is happening in your body? I
Mm-hmm.
would say that's been a big change because I think it was like a paradigm shift that the brain is only part of, it's only a little part of it. It's not the whole thing. So that's
Yeah.
one. Um, oh, I mean, another huge one is how much more acceptable it is to go to therapy. Like it,
Oh,
when I started, I mean, it still was a little bit like taboo, or only certain people went, or you only went at certain times in your life, or you had to be like really somehow messed up, which I never believed. But like now
that
I
was the
say,
conception back then. That was 25 years ago that you
yeah,
were schizophrenic, something was really wrong. You were in an institution in order to go to
or
therapy.
you were going through a divorce, or you were
You were in
having a
trauma.
breakdown. But now I would say it's really integrated into people's regular lives. Like it's integrated into their
Yeah.
benefits. Like back
Yeah.
then, people had these benefits, but most people didn't even know they had them.
Yeah.
And they would think, oh no, I don't need to go to therapy. Now it's like everyone goes to therapy. I feel like that, but maybe it's because I'm
So
in
you
this
saw it all
world.
change. You're in it, you live it, you work in it and live it.
Yeah. I only
So
see the people that go. Right. But there's different
yeah.
people now. Like it's much more it's much more integrated into people's lives. I always think of it this way. Back in the old days when it was like Little House on the Prairie, you had Doc Baker and the minister, and that's who everybody talked to. We don't do that the same way anymore. It's mostly
Mhm.
a lot of times it's therapists that people go
Yeah.
to talk
Yeah.
about family issues or their life or yeah.
So if you say 25 years ago, what would be an example of a very significant common challenge then versus now?
Oh boy. I don't know because what flashed through my mind there was people are people.
Mm-hmm.
I would say things seem harder, particularly in the world of kids,
Mm-hmm.
but I still don't know if it's kids are having a harder time or if we see kids more as people and we
Yeah.
appreciate their struggles are like anyone else's. They're not just badly behaved. Like back
Yeah.
then, it was like kids were either good or bad, like
Yeah.
were they
Yeah.
respectful or they were bad. And now
Mm-hmm.
we're way more nuanced about seeing them as people who have emotional struggles. And so I can't remember the question. What was it?
Just like a comparison between what would be a common struggle that you would have faced dealing
Yeah.
with your clients 25 years ago versus what the world is now. and what a
Well,
common
I
struggle
mean,
would be.
this is depressing, but like back then, it was a big deal if someone was divorcing.
Yeah.
And now that almost is never the presenting thing. You know, it's never the main thing that people, because it's so much more common for
Hmm.
people to split up, and no judgment on it. Polyamory is different now than it
Yeah.
used to be. Gender issues are different. Like there's all this
Yeah.
sort of cultural differences, but in my
Yeah.
opinion, people's pain is the same back then as it is now. There's just more permission to be more
Hmm.
um, living in different truths in our culture than there used to be, right? I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. People are able to be a little bit more honest. And I
Yeah.
say a little bit because if you take the average from the extreme where you've got people that are crying for attention and they're using every excuse to whatever it is to have acknowledgement over bad behavior if that's their form to get attention, um, versus back then you couldn't use mental health as a weapon. Back then it didn't exist. You actually, I should say that you couldn't
Yeah.
weaponize mental health 25 years ago.
No,
It wasn't
it was
used.
already a weapon.
It
It just
was
was a
like a
weapon.
in the closet weapon.
Yeah.
It was
But
like
you
this
know,
closeted weapon.
there's something like what you just described. I would say that has changed this idea of people wanting attention. I think that was more of a thought back then that people do things for
Hmm.
attention.
And now it has,
And
yes,
now I would
I
say
love
it's
that.
evolved into recognizing people do things for connection. These
Hmm.
there's they're bids for connection and they're bids for
Yeah.
unmet needs and they're bids for
Mm.
genuine requirements that have gone
Or
on
even, yeah,
unmet.
not being able to communicate them. And
Yeah.
that's the way that it's come out.
Yeah. Addictions, that's another big
Yeah.
change. That's changed a lot. It's much broader. It's much more acceptable to ask for help with addictions than it
Hmm.
was then. People are more, I mean, so many things have progressed. I'm like, I am of the mind that we progress and that the world is progressing. I know the world feels scary to a lot of people right now, but I see the world as progressing. I think
Do
the
you?
younger generations are pushing
Hmm.
us into more intuitive, emotional places than ever before. They're more
Hmm.
sensitive, they're
Hmm.
more attuned.
Hmm.
So even though there is always, in my mind, bad shit happening in the world,
Yeah.
corruption and misuse of power and all that's not different. But I think we are softer. I
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I tend to
Yeah.
see the best in it. Like, wow, isn't it great how we there's much more hope around treating eating disorders. When I trained in eating
Hmm.
disorders 25 years ago, the general message was, oh, there's nothing you can do about that. It's hopeless. I mean, my generation thought of Karen Carpenter, and well, she died. Nobody else is going to survive it. Like it's and now
So
it's just like, here's what we do. This is how we treat it. This is what happens. So we've progressed so much. I really think so.
yeah. Yeah. I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. I think that that's awesome. What would you say now, like right now, February 2025, would be the biggest misconception about therapy or psychotherapy?
That the therapist is going to tell you how to live your life or what to do.
Geez, that is still the biggest misconception. I've been hearing that. Or I always will hear, well, why would I have to tell somebody else my problems? What is she going to do about it? Or what is he going to do about
Right.
it?
That talking doesn't do anything is another
Yeah.
big misconception. I
Yeah.
think this idea that the misconception that I see a lot is this idea that therapy is this giant problem solving session, that you go in with a problem and the therapist gives you solutions and you apply them and then you go back and tell them why it didn't work or why it did work. I that isn't therapy to me. Like that's
Yeah.
coaching,
Yeah.
or like I coaching has its place and I use coaching when I need it. But coaching is about forward movement, setting goals and moving towards them. Therapy to
Hmm.
me is this safe, soft, nurturing, accepting place where you, as the client, get to discover who you are and what's
Hmm.
important to you. And it has
Hmm.
nothing to do with what a
Hmm.
therapist thinks you should do.
Hmm. Hmm. So what would you tell someone now? What would be your, if someone said to you, I don't want to come to therapy anymore because I don't want to go to therapy. I was told my whole life that it's a waste of time and I don't need it.
Don't go then. You don't
Then
have to.
it's a
Don't
waste of
go.
time.
You
Don't
don't have
go.
to. Yeah. I had someone say to me not long ago, do you think I'm progressing enough?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Like somehow therapy is this place where you have to become better. You have to move forward. You have to solve the problem. Therapists perpetuate that as well by measuring their own worth based on whether their clients move forward and get better. But I think I've been to enough of my own therapy to know how destructive that was to me. That I had this
Yeah.
pressure that I had to somehow be better and different. And I remember saying to that person who said that, am I progressing? I said, I don't give a shit. Like, you don't have to progress. Who taught you you had to progress all the time? You know, like, what's
It was
that
that
about?
something that she was like looking for, or he or she or them were looking for you to tell them, you to give them the permission that they're better. And that,
Yes, I
and all of a
think
sudden,
so.
this is now you're my confidence. You're the one now that's feeding whether or not I'm better or
Okay.
I can do something.
I have this I have this story that I often tell clients because I love it. The woman's name is Alice Miller, and she wrote this book called Drama of the Gifted Child. And to me, it is one of my favorite all-time books about therapy. It was written in, I don't know, maybe the 70s. I don't exactly know. But one thing she wrote about was the way that children who are raised in hierarchical homes are taught to respond to parents. Like the parents are above the children, they have more authority, they have more knowledge. They're going to teach their children how to live so that their children become good people. And if they don't, the parents correct them. She said, when children grow up in that kind of paradigm, they will project that onto a therapist. So they will go to therapy thinking the therapist is like their parent now, adult
Mm-hmm.
version, and
Mm-hmm.
the therapist gets all the ownership of how they should live and whether they're doing a good job and correct them. And listen, some therapists, including me, there was a time in my career where that's really fucking seductive because
Yeah, fair.
you can feel really important when someone gives you that role. Like, what do you think I should do? What do you? But really, to me, good therapists that I've been to will not buy into that. They will process
Mm-hmm.
that dynamic of how did you learn not to trust your equality and yourself and your voice, that you don't have to meet anybody's standards and certainly not mine.
Yeah.
Because mine have no place here. They have no.
Mm-hmm.
So there are systems of therapy, right? And standards that have to do with how therapy gets paid for that sometimes want that progression.
Mm-hmm.
You can have
Yeah.
3 sessions, and at the end of 3 sessions, we're going to see where you're at, and hopefully you're cured. I hate that. That's not
How would that even become a thing?
because of money and scarcity, and therapy's too fucking expensive. And so companies that pay for benefits, you know,
Yeah.
they want it to be
Yeah.
a forward moving thing. Free systems.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked in a free system. You are measured by are they better and can you close their file? And
Mm-hmm.
so we're all guilty of it, but I don't think because, some of the best therapy I've ever done myself and with other people, people fall apart. I fell apart long before I ever made
Mm-hmm.
significant changes. It got worse, not better.
So how do you protect yourself throughout all your eras of helping people? How do you protect yourself and your mental health? What does that look like? How have you stayed in this profession for 27 years?
Wow, yeah, that's a big question. Well, I haven't always. I mean, I've had lots of breakdowns, burnouts, times I've gone off work for months at a time. I'm
What
not.
does that look like when you are a therapist and you're in that mode?
Mm.
What does that look like? You're off for months and what's happening?
Well, the last time I went off for a significant time, I mean, before I went off, I was so tired and hopeless and just sad and heavy and bitter and cynical about life and people, and I just feel like
Mhm.
I can't listen to one more story, including my
Yeah.
own. Like that's where I am right before I go, oh shit, I need a break. Oh,
So
this,
that's the
oh,
marker.
I'm over full. Like my
Yeah.
bucket's not good. And when I went off that time, um, I spent a lot of time alone. I I have a little cubby in my studio. It used to be a closet. That's how small it is. It has
I've
enough
seen it and
room
it's
for a
amazing.
chair.
You
I
should
was
rent it.
I was in there every day and I
Hmm. Hiding, protecting.
hiding, journaling,
Yeah.
crying,
Mm.
healing, looking, like I guess being a therapist has changed me, but it changed me because of what I had to look at in my own history,
Yeah.
which maybe in other professions you don't have to look so closely at childhood or history because it doesn't affect your performance at work, but it does for us. It does.
That's no one would think that. I would never think that. My childhood does not affect my performance in my job.
And mine does.
What
So,
you darn rights it would.
and so when people get burned out, like when I've been burned out or not in a good place, it is
Hmm.
only because the client's material is rubbing up against my material. It's not that the
Hmm.
clients did this to me.
Hmm.
It's that I have the Velcro that stuff starts sticking to that I need to go and deal with. And that's an amazing, now I see it as that's an amazing gift of being a therapist is you really, if you answer the call, you get
Yeah.
to really go deep inside your own psyche. And
Hmm.
maybe, I mean, I'm thinking this now, which is fucking me up a little bit. If I'd never been a therapist, maybe I never would have looked at my childhood so with so much scrutiny. Maybe I wouldn't have made the decisions I made or
Hmm.
let myself know the things I came to know. Maybe that wouldn't have been
Hmm.
necessary. But I don't blame my profession for it.
Hmm.
It just
Yeah.
is like part of the package. So I guess it's the answer is I gotta constantly be taking care of my own material.
So what was your journey to get into being a therapist?
Good. It was all my own. I was, 100% because of my childhood. And yet I was only aware of parts of it when I decided I wanted to be a therapist. I kind of had this deep fascination with
Hmm.
therapy and an
Hmm.
enticement and compulsion to do it and a feeling like I was going to be in trouble for doing it and all of these things I didn't understand. And
Hmm.
then
That's interesting.
yeah, like there was some things in my history that I hadn't yet come to the surface the way they did
Hmm.
later.
Hmm.
So I followed the call and, did the traditional steps of going to school and all
Hmm.
of that. But really the big steps of being a therapist and doing the process was being willing to know myself, all of it.
Yeah, all of it and
Oh,
dealing with it.
and it was
That must
painful.
back you in a corner. That must have backed you into a bit of a corner.
It actually did, but
Yeah.
in a good way, I guess. Like in my family, when I was growing up, they used to call me the psychiatrist. Like I always had this want for people to be
Mhm.
talking. Like I wanted to know what people felt and let's play a game. Tell me what you're mad about. Like I think
Like,
my
come
family
to my
hated
birthday
it.
party and let's talk about why we're mad.
Yes. I think my family didn't like it, but I had this insatiable need to unearth secrets. And, I know you've talked about it too. Like you were doing
Yeah.
people's hair from the
Yeah.
time you were little. I was
Oh, yeah.
asking people to disclose their secrets, like, you'll
Yeah.
feel better. Just tell me the truth, like,
I won't tell anybody. I promise. I'm a vault. And then you're like, yeah, now I got to go to counseling because I'm a vault.
oh my gosh. I don't know
So what?
if I answered that enough, but yeah.
Well, just for your own childhood, but did you go right out of high school and into
No.
into no? So
When I can't, when
what
I
was
was
the
in
before?
Okay, well, when I was in high school, believe it or not, I wanted to be a mortician.
Shit, I thought about that too.
To the point that I even spent a day with the funeral home in the town that I lived, and they showed me all about how they embalmed the body and how they prepared the body. Like I was like
Did
all
you see
in.
it on a dead body?
No, it's
Oh,
just the equipment and the space. And I thought that was, I don't know what the fascination was, but I ended up not doing that.
maybe because we
So,
like true crime and we're
oh,
weirdos and like, oh,
yeah. I think I liked the idea of the depth of the psychology of being around people who just lost a loved one and knowing the backstory. And, it was like I wanted all my clients to be dead and be a therapist. And
I
then I,
love it.
then I, grew up and decided I could have live clients. Anyway, then, then I went in off to university, not knowing what to do or what I was going
Mhm.
to do. Did a couple years of world religion as my main focus.
Ooh.
So fascinating.
God, I love that. I would love
Yeah, it was
that.
so good. I
I
I did
bet.
a lot of courses in that, and then, I had that one day where I went, "What the hell am I doing? What kind of job am I gonna get at the end of this?" I didn't have a lot of
Consultant on a talk show.
I didn't have a lot of direction at that time in my life, so I was just kind of floundering.
Mhm.
And then I went into recreation therapy and did a degree in recreation therapy, and gerontology was my
What is
minor,
that?
the
What is
study of
gerontology?
the study of aging. So I was really in love with working with the elderly and the idea of recreation therapy. To me, this is my definition, is using something you love to get in a flow state to do healing. But the
Mhm.
flow state is what actually makes you heal or receptive to healing. So I love that. And until I realized I don't think I want to work in nursing homes the rest of my life.
Yeah, fair.
And then I
That's
went
fair.
and then I went into therapy and thought, well, that recreation degree must have been a waste of time. But actually it wasn't, because I still use
No.
the premises today, you know.
I bet you do. No education is a waste. None.
No, none.
Absolutely none.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so what would you tell me what made you decide to do a podcast? And okay, there's question one. I want to know
Mhm.
what made you decide to do a podcast. And question two is I want to know how you choose topics.
Oh. Well, I don't know that I decided that I wanted to do a podcast. I was working with a business consultant who I adore. And
Mhm.
because I knew I really wanted to build a business just purely from my heart, like
Mhm.
my heart's desire, put it into a business, which is working with therapists. Like I just
Mhm.
wanted to work with, support, encourage, and love therapists so that they could be the best therapists they could be. Because being a therapist is so lonely. So that's number one.
Oh,
It's very lonely. You don't talk to anybody about what you do. You don't share anything. You don't, it feels taboo to talk about
I was actually going to ask
counseling.
that when fit therapists get together, do you guys talk about yourselves or do you talk about situational things in your practices?
Both, I would say. But we talk a
Yeah,
lot about our own selves. Like we talk a lot about that.
that's
And
good.
sometimes we talk about clients without, saying who it is
Yeah,
for
of course.
help. I mean, to get help, right? But
Oh, of
we're
course.
always under this sort of cloak of not wanting to ever divulge, right? So
Hmm.
it's very limited what you will even give yourself permission to talk about. So I was working with this business coach and he said, "Okay, Jen, here's what you're going to do. You're going to start a podcast. And out of that podcast, and I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding? Are you kidding? I can't do a podcast." He's like, "Yep, you're going to do a podcast and you're going to start right now. And I want you to make a list of people you're going to interview and then get them on there and start like this week. Start it."
So, like on Tuesday, you're going to start a podcast and
Yep,
you just went,
just do it.
okay,
And
let's
I
do
just
this.
said, "Okay, I'm going to do it." And I just started doing it. And I didn't think much about it. And you know what? I haven't listened to a single episode of my
Why?
podcast.
Why?
I don't know.
Have you
I just,
started one and turned it off or you just were, nope, I don't want to see it.
I just don't even, I listened to one. Yeah, I've listened to bits of some, but I just, it's cringy. I don't like
I hope
listening to
that goes
myself.
away. Yeah, fair. I don't think anyone likes listening to themselves.
No, it's so
No.
cringy. And I don't want
It,
to,
yeah.
I don't want the hangover of vulnerability. I don't want to like scrutinize what I shouldn't have said and all like so I just don't.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
then I discovered after I interviewed like the first person, and the
Hmm.
first person I interviewed was someone that I had known for a long time. She's a therapist, she's a school counselor, and she is
Hmm.
so cool. And I was hooked on, oh my God, I could listen to this all day. And then every single person I had on there, I've loved it.
How
I'm
cool
just,
is that?
I'm fascinated by
Yeah.
people's stories,
Yes.
but I still don't
And
want to
all
listen to
the
myself.
dirt. So
All the
how do you
dirt,
how
yeah.
do you choose your topics?
I don't. I choose my people.
You just choose your people
I choose my
and you
people
just,
and I see what
okay?
happens,
Yep.
and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to geek out about therapy with people who've been to therapy or therapists and just talk about what helped them and what didn't and why, and like why did they become a therapist and what happened to them as a
Yeah.
kid and all of that. It's fascinating
And
to me.
how are they with navigating like uncomfortable situations? Like when you're with other therapists and you get into the goods, I'm sure you get into the goods. There's no small talk. Like, how are the
Oh
roads
my
on your
God.
drive here?
I'm
It was like,
ruined for small talk.
so yeah, there's
I can't
none.
even
So
do
it's
it.
like, hi, my name's Kris. Hi, my name's Jen. So did you have trauma from the age of 12 to
Exactly.
15?
Yeah.
Were you abused? Were you, it
Yes,
just
we
like
go
all
right
comes,
there,
yeah, like it goes straight out. So like,
straight to the
have there,
point.
it, have there been, I'm sure there's been situations where you've had to navigate like some kind of very sensitive, uncomfortable
Yes.
topics.
Yeah.
Tell me how you do that.
Well, when it comes to like one thing I've noticed is I really want to get into talking about therapy with therapists, but we're all so paranoid of saying too much about a client that might
Hmm.
recognize themselves that we actually don't really go there. And that's sad to me because I think people want to hear,
Yeah,
so I haven't found a way around that entirely. Um,
yeah.
my own material, like I grew up in a family that there was incest. I was sexually abused by my mom. There was a lot of drinking. Uh, I I still find that hard to talk about. I immediately start imagining them listening to it and feeling totally horrified and betrayed and angry. Then I, imagine them being mad at me and putting me in jail. Like every single time I have a bit of a panic. And yet, I
Even
believe
now,
even now, yeah, not as bad because I believe in the power of truth telling
hmm
more.
hmm
Like that healing begets healing begets healing. And
Yeah.
so I try to push through it, but yeah, there's dicey things. There's things that I think people want to talk about, but they're scared of other
Yeah.
people's reactions. I've had I've had guests on that have wanted things taken out because they named somebody that they've struggled with, or
Hmm.
and we still
Hmm.
have these loyalties,
Yeah.
and so we
Yeah.
should. But
Yeah.
sometimes I wish we were free to just say anything.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So, and sometimes we do, and it's great,
Yeah.
isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
So
really
really,
is.
like the more you work on it and the more that stuff can come out, I think the less shame there is around it.
Mhm.
Really. So
Mhm.
when you are supporting these really tough conversations and they're triggering you from your own abuse
Yeah.
from your life, are you battling the separation constantly between put the trigger over here and I'm listening to this person and this story is sounding like I'm looking in the mirror and I'm trying not to have the
Oh God,
feels
I've had
about
that.
it?
Oh, you mean as a guest on a podcast or as a therapy client?
Both.
Oh
Both.
yeah. I mean, I remember years ago, I got back from lunch and quickly looked at who was coming in next, and it was someone who had been sexually abused by their mother. I had never in my life met anybody in real life. And I immediately thought I shouldn't be seeing this person. It's too close to home. I got too much of my own shit. I got, and
Yeah.
then I just did because they were already on their way. And I I think part of my style as a therapist and one of the misconceptions to me about therapy is that we have to be so robotic and so removed and detached to help people. And I am
Mhm.
the polar opposite of that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I am more inclined to appropriately share when it makes
Yeah.
sense for the client, but
Yeah.
I try not to beat myself up for having a reaction internally. Like it's human and we're
It
in a
is
real
human.
my friend used to always say, we are actually in real relationship with people.
Mhm.
And that is the healing tool.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think being triggered is the enemy as much as it just needs to be disciplined and be
Yeah.
careful with it and don't take over the person's session, you know? Don't
Yes.
take over like, "Well, let me tell you what happened to me."
Yeah,
Don't do
exactly.
that, which
Yeah.
I probably anything that I say don't do, I've probably done it. Like, I'm sure that I have done it at some point in my career, and so then I try to do better, whatever.
Well, really, what yeah. So what would you say, what would be advice you could give someone in my profession, being a hairstylist who does not have training in therapy whatsoever, but is also in a position where clients will share very sensitive topics. So, what is advice that you could give that would help someone like me support them?
Well, I think first of all, I would say the reason they're telling you is because they feel safe with you.
Yeah.
People don't divulge things, I think, willy-nilly. I think there's a part of us that can tell when we're with someone that can A,
Hmm.
handle it, or B,
Hmm.
treat it with sacredness.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I just think be yourself.
Yeah.
Like, just be yourself and be a genuinely caring human being with it, and
Yeah.
you'll know what to do and what not
Yeah.
to do. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, some of the best healing that I've ever done is in a women's circle with people who are not therapists. And it's been so healing because they're just regular women.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they have needed that normalness.
Hmm.
Like, even I've experienced that with you. Like, when I've told you things, there's something beautiful to me that you're not a
Yeah.
therapist. and you still react in this human way. What I love is you are genuinely giving facial expressions and your verbal response is authentic and
Oh shit. It's a little too authentic. Let's be
no,
for real
never,
sometimes.
never.
Oh
And
hell.
I find that really, I crave that. And I think people crave that. They want to
Yeah.
see themselves mirrored.
Yes. Humans crave that.
Yes. So
Absolutely.
I would say just
Oh
be
heck.
yourself, be human. That's all people need,
Yeah,
really.
you're right. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What have you what have you learned from your clients that have taught you lessons? Like what kind of lessons have your clients taught you?
Oh my God, so
I know
much.
that's kind of a very like like not a well-rounded, but a very big question.
Well, I'm thinking back to some of my memorable experiences, and there's some that come to mind right away. I mean, I've told this story before, but I saw this girl for a very, very long time, and she had lots of struggles, like lots, and went down
Mm,
really dark paths. And I think I saw her for almost 7 years. And near the end of her counseling, so I mean, I saw her weekly. So it was like weekly, year after year through her growing up
wow.
years.
Aw.
And through so much hardship and so much, oh, she just had the deck was stacked against her, it seemed like so much. And half the time I didn't know how to help, to be
Mhm.
honest. Like half the
Aw.
time I just thought, but I tried really hard. I would try everything. I tried,
Mhm.
I don't know, whatever. I tried it all. Anyway, it was near the end of her time, and we were sort of preparing to say goodbye. And I said, at one point, like, what do you think helped you about coming here? As a way to reflect on
Yeah.
work she'd done or whatever. And she said, oh, it was the granola bars that you gave me every time I came. Okay, this is what I got from that. Because first I was a little horrified, like, oh my God, it's true. I don't know how to help you. Like, but
I
it just,
suck. I did nothing.
yeah.
Hmm.
But what stayed with me the most is the granola bar to me probably symbolized the nurturing and the
Yeah.
safety and the
Yeah.
attunement,
Consistency.
but it
Yes.
also was good at keeping me humble. Like
Oh
you,
my
it's not
gosh.
about you, honey. Like, we create a space in therapy and we create a place.
Yeah. What
And
is your what is your
that's
what is your
important.
hope? What is your hope for therapy? What do you hope? Like what do you see um down the road? What would be your hope?
I think when I talk to therapists, like I have a community of therapists that I do
Yeah.
supervision with, more of a community, a sanctuary, and I feel the hope when I'm with them. They're kind and human and real, and they dive deep into their own stuff, and they
Mhm.
want to come from more places than just think different thoughts and here's a worksheet. Like, I hope
Yeah.
we move away from that entirely.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can help, but it's not true healing work, I don't think, when it becomes so kind of like heady.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
heart-centered, curious seekers. And people, like, what gives me hope is when people who are therapists give themselves permission to be themselves, because that's when they're good. That's when they're
Oh
so
yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's
Never
when
try
it's
to be
built
somebody
in them.
else.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready for my last question?
Yeah. Yes. I'm ready.
What advice would
Uh-oh.
you give somebody wanting to follow in your footsteps? Like you're going to get a little baby Jen apprentice and
Oh,
yep,
okay.
yep. What advice are you going to give that person?
Well,
who's had trauma in their life and wants to help other people.
oh my goodness. Well, I do get that because I have a lot of students a lot of the time who are, embarking on the profession. And what I'm really committed to is that when we talk about them. We don't,
Yeah.
we like, I think good supervision is a lot about the human part of the therapist, not about the client and what to do with the client. I think I really stress to people starting out, do your own work, do your own healing, walk your own path, see what it feels like from the inside out. Like really experience the journey of healing and you'll learn more doing that. So, with the first session that I have with them, I'm like, okay, let's do a genogram. Who's your mom? Who's your dad? What's your family story? What's your history? How do you feel talking about it? Like we're right into it. And they come with their pencil and their paper and they think I'm going to tell them what to do with their clients.
Yes, they do.
And I'm
And
like,
they're
"Oh, honey, you're my client now."
like,
Like this is
and
going
they're
to
like,
be.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to
And
say to her.
I romanticize the old days in psychotherapy when psychoanalysis required the therapist to be doing twice or three times a week of their own therapy. Like we've kind of moved away from that being a requirement. And it's
Really?
become this kind of more academic learning of what are the methods the other thing is I tell people stop reading all the fucking books and like go to a couple trainings, then just find your own way. Like it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be, it's about relational stuff. It's not necessarily in a fancy intervention.
Yes. Yeah. Or it doesn't have to be a
Doesn't have
fancy
to be. You don't
intervention.
have to,
Yeah.
yeah, like I
Yeah.
just don't want therapists to lose who they are in their
Mhm.
work
Mhm.
because that's what enlivens us is to know ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Well, and that's how you're going to relate to the person that you're treating or helping or supporting.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that you've kinda pulled your pants down in public too, because
Yeah.
that's what it feels like, right?
Down in public on purpose one
Right?
time.
And if you
Mhm.
go to someone who's never
Mhm.
experienced the vulnerability of that,
Then
it
how can you, yeah.
you know, there's a
Mhm.
different level of compassion, I think, that happens with therapists who've walked the path too.
Mhm. Have you ever
Yeah.
met a therapist who's never been to therapy?
Yes,
No way. That's weird to me.
I know, me
That's weird
too.
to me.
Me too. I have, and, it's more common than you think.
Actually, you know what? I'm just going to be like a little judgy for a minute, but I think it's funny when there's people that have the education but no work experience, and then they go on this entire crusade to write books and do podcasts and spread all of this knowledge
Uh-huh.
with absolutely zero experience
Experience.
with the one-on-one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So to me, that has been an interesting thing as a layman to when you talk about therapy or if your friends go to therapy and you've been going for a long time, you start to kind of ask those questions too, where you go, "Oh, well, tell me about your therapist." Because
Yeah.
when you are a client, you want to know that your therapist is kind of somewhat normal. I know I shouldn't use normal as a
Uh-huh.
word, but like, you go, oh, I hope that they've
Yeah.
been through some stuff. I hope that they've had to do some
Right.
work because that's going to
Like you
make them relate to you.
totally like who wants to go and see someone who has just got it all together and they've always made good choices and
Yeah.
they've never struggled. And
Yeah.
so they're just kind of there to show you the way. Like that's, kind of the opposite of
Mhm.
what I think most people, including me, want. I don't need to know what their story is or any of that, but I want to know that they know the level of vulnerability that it takes to
That's it.
explore your own demons and dark side and
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
Because
And shit.
I found some of the people that I've known over the years who've never been think they don't have any or they don't need
How
help
can
with it.
you
They don't need
like
help.
that's crazy to me.
I
That's
know.
actually crazy to me.
Well, it doesn't make me want to tell them my shit. I can tell you that.
No. I would be like, you are full of it. You have zero self-reflection.
But you know
You are
what?
not able, yeah, it's
I
that
know,
I wouldn't
but
like.
having said that, I know someone right now who I really admire and respect, and they've told me that they've never been. And I was kind of
Hmm.
shocked. So, I guess I shouldn't judge, but of course I do because I'm a
Because
person.
we all do.
We
Yeah,
all
because we're
do.
human. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big misconception too. When I was in school, they talked a lot about, and we don't judge, and we're never going to judge. And that's counselors have to not judge anybody. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to judge anybody. And then I got to the real world and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with all these judgments I have?
We're
And
good
then
with those.
I met my first real therapist and he taught me about no, we judge and we own it and we have a way to process it so it doesn't get in the way of the client. But of course, we judge. Of
Yeah.
course, we do.
Yeah,
But
you
when it
can't shut that off.
No, but if it starts irritating me, then I know, oh, this is something I haven't processed about me. I know that today.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas I didn't know that then. I thought I was irritated at the client.
Yeah, you've done a little work, Jen.
I've
You've
done a
done a
little,
little work.
yeah, it's painful.
Oh, it is painful, but it's
Yeah.
necessary.
I
And
don't think
that's how you're
people,
able to offer the advice that you're able to offer.
I don't think people realize how hard therapists work on themselves to be able to give what they give to clients. And I don't even know if therapists realize how hard they work on themselves sometimes. Like, I think
I'm
they
sure.
undersell it too, but it is a constant looking in the mirror of how's my family? How's my parenting? How's my communication? Like, it's constant.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I
I
think
could
they
see that.
don't get enough love for
Hmm.
how hard that is,
Hmm.
as a life
I
skill.
agree. I
That's why
totally agree.
most of us have a fantasy of being a Walmart greeter or a plumber or a bus driver because
Hey,
we wouldn't have to go into all these holes in our soul?
well, what's the average burnout in your profession? How
I
many
don't
years?
know.
5 to 10, I bet.
I don't know. But I
I would,
have known people at the end of their career who've gone completely off their rocker. And
oh,
I think it's from not sharing and not having community and not I don't know. Not like we have to
oh,
find a way to share to stay sane, but we have to share in a way that doesn't betray the trust of our clients. So
well,
there's
yeah.
ways to do it. There are ways to do that.
That's good. I'm glad that your community shares those insights that that you say that.
Hmm.
Really, holy man. Oh, those are all of my questions, Miss Jem.
Oh, thanks. That was fun.
I loved that. I loved not knowing your little journey to being a therapist. I
Oh,
liked, yeah,
yeah.
man, your students must love you.
I
You
don't
should
know.
interview some of your students.
Oh, I should.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some of
Mm-hmm.
my students became my staff, like they
I'm sure they
um,
have.
are now in their own private practices and I'm still connected with them. And it's it's one
Oh,
of the most biggest gifts of my career is getting to watch someone. I've even had a couple people who were clients who became therapists. And
I believe it.
oh my God.
I believe it. They're like, I want to do that. I want to do it
Oh,
like you're doing
so
it.
magical. Gives me the
Oh,
goosebumps.
it's like a legacy. It is.
Yeah.
It's a little legacy, Jen. That is
Oh, it's so special.
it is so special. I would
Yeah.
love to watch you do a podcast with a freshie, a baby
Okay.
therapist,
Okay.
because especially with the way that the world is currently,
Yeah.
I would be so interested to know what the generations of the 25-year-olds that are coming out with
Yeah.
degrees and starting private practices are dealing with versus what you would be
Oh,
in your private practice.
interesting.
Yeah, like
Yes.
where do they sit with wanting to know like how informed do you really want to be? How serious do you take things? Where do you
Right.
get your information from?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to know that because I
Mm,
mean, if you were somebody who was in a marginalized community, we're privileged white girls.
yep.
I would like to know that it right now, what a 25 to 35-year-old is going to go and book an appointment with the uncertainty of what the world is and
Hmm.
what those concerns look like if you were somebody who was LGBTQ plus or a
Yes.
just yeah, I
Yeah.
would love to know that what they're
That's a
facing.
great, that's a great point. I'm going to do that. I have someone
Good,
in mind.
good. I would love to
Stay
watch it.
tuned.
I can't wait. I want to watch it. Uh,
We didn't even laugh as much as we usually do. It was
because
like,
I had actual real questions, Jen. I was like, the viewers want to know. I want to know when did you go to school? How long
oh
did it
my
take? What
gosh.
I like, yeah. I
Yeah.
think that the people that
Do you
they,
want to
I think,
know when I went to school? Oh my God. It is one of the best memories of my life that time. So I went to Gonzaga University, ran a master's program out of Calgary. And every second weekend, I drove into Calgary Friday afternoon. I worked in the morning. I drove to Calgary. I went to class from 5 to 9, and then Saturday morning, 9 to 12, or something like that, 8 to 12. And then I drove home. And I did that for a year and a half. And I would drive in and I'd be so excited, like, what are we going to learn? And it was a group of about 20 of us. I f- I loved it so much. And I would drive home and my husband and I still drank at that time. I don't drink anymore, but we'd have a bottle of wine, we'd light incense, and I would tell him all about what I learned and he loved it and I loved it. And I had this one class where the professor gave us a list of movies to watch that highlighted different mental health issues. And if we watched them and wrote about them, we got extra marks. So we'd watch these movies together, and I still remember some of them. They were so good. And I
come on,
just
I feel like both of
fell
you were
in love.
actually writing stuff about it and then comparing notes.
Oh, I totally fell in love with the whole profession when I was in school. Like, I just couldn't get enough of it. And my husband loved it too.
Yeah, I believe
He
it.
loved hearing about it.
What's your most fascinating mental health disorder? If you could pick a favorite one, what would be your favorite?
Favorite. Well, probably trauma for me.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
because of my own journey with trauma and CPTSD. Um,
Mhm.
and then lately, okay, lately I have gotten into this, which is about to probably discredit me because it's going to sound like lunacy. You ready?
I feel like I have to adjust myself.
So
Okay, lay it on
okay,
me.
okay, let's see what happens for you not being a therapist when you hear this from me.
Okay. Okay.
There is this thing that happens when people are traumatized. And
Hmm.
this is very parallel to my own story, where if you're traumatized enough, you dissociate,
Hmm.
meaning you kind of go away in your mind and you maybe don't remember it, right?
Hmm.
It's a
Right?
pretty common understanding. And then something can trigger it and it comes back to you later in life. Oh, that happened, right? Like there's people who've witnessed murders as a younger person and then they don't remember it at all. But then it comes back to them later in life, things like that. So I had this experience myself of not remembering the sexual abuse I experienced until I was 36. And then it all came back. Yeah. It all came back. And then I spent years and years just trying to stay really out of the psych unit because I just was like, I didn't know how I was going to survive this. And I didn't believe myself and I thought I was crazy. And it went on and on and on. It was horrible. And I didn't want it to be true. And I had a
Mm.
family who told me it wasn't true. And I'd made it up. And it was just the worst, worst thing ever. So now I feel like I'm at a point in the journey where I'm really reflecting on what that was like. And I always was left with this question. And I've asked every therapist I've ever been to, including my psychiatrist now, where was I? So when this was happening, and I get the process of dissociation and dissociative amnesia, which is what I had,
Okay.
where was I? Because if you were looking in on it, wasn't in a coma. I was there. I was watching. And so lately I've been really fascinated with the question of where
Like,
spirit,
where did you go?
where did I go? And the whole intersection to me on spirituality meeting trauma. Because I have come to notice that people with significant trauma that went on and on and on are very deeply spiritual people. And I was too,
Interesting.
even from when I was a child. And I feel like, hey, I'm putting this out there, it's going to sound crazy, and I know that. I feel like people with that level of trauma time travel. I think there is no time and space, seriously, right? And I think they have the ability to quantum, like, like we're learning more about metaphysical stuff and time and space being only one understanding. And I have heard
Quantum physics.
so many people over the years talk about, and they don't tell very many people because they sound crazy, just like I feel scared to talk about it now because it sounds crazy. But I know I was somewhere and I wasn't in my body and I wasn't present, but I was. So where was I in my psyche? And I think I
Can
was
you
somewhere
see
else.
anything? Is there any picture of it at all? Like, if you can
Oh
go
yeah, when
back
it
to
came back to me, I saw it all vividly. But where was I in the moment that
in the
it was
moment. Yeah,
happening?
so you
Yeah.
can't get to a spot where
Like
you can access.
even when I remembered it, I remembered it feeling like it happened to somebody else. And I remembered a lot of things like I was watching it from across the room, which makes you feel kind of crazy. But that's a phenomenon that happens in trauma all the time. People draw themselves floating above up in the ceiling, looking
Hello,
down
near
at.
death experiences.
Yeah. So
Jen,
I'm really
you're
interested
talking
in
to the right one. You're talking to the right girl here because at one point they
they.
humans denied the existence of aliens. Look what's happening now.
I know,
Okay. Now
right?
it's all starting to come out.
Yeah.
Now, like whistleblowing's a thing. I fully believe, as well as you, when your body is pushed to its absolute max,
Hmm.
there's a crack somewhere and you fall into that crack and it shuts it off. So, do
You
you
know,
remember, like, did you just wake up one day at 36 and go, was that a dream? Was that I now have to dig all of
mm,
that apart?
oh my God. Literally, I woke up. I had started going to counseling because I knew something was really wrong and I wasn't feeling right. And I had all these symptoms of something that I didn't understand. And I walked into a therapist's office that I knew with my baby in a car seat and said, help me, help me. You have to help me. Something's wrong. That started this sort of rumbling was starting within me. And I did literally wake up one night and had this clear, crystal clear thought your mother was sexually inappropriate with you. And I freaked out. I thought that can't be true. This has to be a lie. Why am I thinking these weird things? And then literally all the memories flooded back to me over about 4 years. And it was really terrifying. So I had a lot of years of just trying to get through that and trying to piece myself back together. But now that I feel like I'm pretty grounded in it, I'm starting to wonder these other bigger questions about the sort of mechanics of the mind and the psyche when,
Yes,
I mean, I'm not the first person to wonder this stuff, I don't think, but
absolutely not. There's books written about it. There's TV shows
yeah,
made about it. It's
yeah.
all connected.
So I'm
I don't
fascinated,
know. I
right?
think that I can't wait. I think that you should deep dive on that. Find some more people
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
I
That's
know.
re- it's the same thing as the near death, and you can't tell me that that doesn't happen when there's all these people that can actually sit across the room and watch themselves dying
Mhm.
and then
Right?
come back and tell you everything that happened.
It's just like, over 27 years, I've heard similar stories from trauma survivors about, well, I've never told anybody this, but I had déjà vu so bad when I was a kid, so did I, where I would know things before they would happen. Now, there was one theory for a while that said, oh, trauma survivors think that they did to reassure that, to kind of comfort themselves about what was going to happen, but it's a retrospect thing. I don't think so. I think, okay, here's what I think about. You know, Outlander?
Yeah.
Of course. Do you remember the scene in Outlander where she time traveled back and there was a boy who was dying
Hmm.
and she was a healer and they were bringing in a priest because clearly he had the devil in him. And she shows up from the future and says, he's not full of Satan. He has an infection and he needs antibiotic and he'll be fine.
And they're
I
like, what's
feel like
antibiotics?
that was so impactful to me because I think one day that's going to be what we're saying about our understanding now about trauma. Like somebody's going to come and say, oh my God, they didn't even know about time travel, or, like
It's just going to have a different name.
it's going to be a
Yeah.
complete mind blowing thing. But
Yeah.
I do, like I have said to my now therapist, who happens to be a psychiatrist, being in dissociation is the most beautiful experience ever. It is. She said to me once, like, tell me what it's like. And I said, it's like I'm nowhere. And it's blissful.
Hmm.
And so I just feel like there's so much we need to understand about that instead of thinking the only job
Yeah.
in therapy is to get someone to stop dissociating, or like it's so much
Yeah.
deeper than that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
Oh,
tangent.
oh, I love that, Jen.
Yeah.
That's good. That's really
I
good.
could work with traumatized people every day of the week, all day. It's my favorite
Can
thing
can
ever.
you like look at somebody in the grocery store and be like, "Yep." You can look
Mm,
in someone's eyes and go, "That person's dealing with some trauma."
sometimes. No, probably not. I
No?
don't know. Yeah. I mean, people have really good masks and
Yeah, they do.
but I do know that when there's people who are hurting other people, personality issues, that kind of thing, that they're hurt people.
Yeah.
They've been wounded. I know that.
Mm.
Like I know we joke in our culture about the Karens and certain world leaders that have very impactful personalities, but deep down.